do want all of you to join me and first of all thank Chris Smith from the PD, who's kind of like Ava Barron, the conscience and the heart of Santa Rosa, and he's going to be the moderator. And then we have the two honorees, two from the greatest generation, and I'd like you to join me in giving a really good Santa Rosa welcome to Al Maggini and Bob Trombetta.
Well, thank you on behalf of all three of us, and I can tell you truly that this is a distinct honor for me to share a stage with these two gentlemen. Al Maggini was born in San Francisco 100 years and 2 months ago. He is a graduate of St. Ignatius High School. He flew, I hope I have the numbers right, 35 bombing missions over Germany as a navigator aboard Boeing's B-17 Flying Fortress. He was keen to stay alive for a number of reasons, foremost, to get home to his Helen, whom he'd married in 1938. As a civilian, Al Maggini worked as a stockbroker for something like 65 years. Thereabouts? Long time. He worked that long. Bob Trombetta is only 93 years old. And he grew up, as you will hear, not only in this neighborhood, but pretty much almost on this block. He graduated from Santa Rosa High School with the class of 1940. He wanted to go to Montgomery, but it wasn't even, it wasn't going to wait 18 years. Bob Trombetta flew 91 combat missions. As the pilot of a Republic P-47 fighter bomber that he dubbed and identified on its nose as Mrs. T. Mrs. T might want to stand up. This is Marjorie Trombetta. And as you can see, his uniform still fits. This is the actual uniform. They were married in March 1944. So, let's begin. I'm hoping that we'll have time for Q&A from the audience when we get done. We'll see how close to midnight it is. We won't actually go that long. We're thinking about an hour or so. Bob, you breathed your first breath at Santa Rosa's former Mary Jessie Hospital in 1922. Tell us a little about the place down the block where you grew up, where you were living. I think you're supposed to be mic'd. We'll see if it works. Go ahead and talk and we'll see how it sounds. Just
Right here, huh?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
modern technology.
Yes, my dad opened a grocery store, Trombetta Groceries on Wilson and 6th Street. And after being born,
Chris, the mic's not on.
The little blue light is on.
That's not the mic. You have the only mic for the stage.
So do I give him my mic?
Yes, you do.
I do give him my mic.
Yes.
boy, I mean, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that after being born, mother and dad
brought me to the house, which was on top of the grocery store on 6th and Wilson Street. And Brother Al had preceded me by 3 years. And what I'd like to say about that particular thing is that the grocery business in that time, if I may,
You may.
9th Street was Vinci Guerra Market, and the Forney Market was on 7th and Wilson, and Trombetta was on 6th and Wilson, and Rodolphi was on Lower 4th Street, and Pachacolupi was just about 5 houses up from Rodolphi, and Aragoni was in downtown Santa Rosa, the upper crust, and Canterbury was out on, I forget now that street. Maybe it was, what street is that? At any rate, at that time, the upper crust, which was east of center of Santa Rosa, considered this area to be Dago Town. Some said Dago Town, and some said Little Italy. We preferred the word Little Italy to Dago Town. So, at any rate, and also next to the Franco-American bakery was, I forget the name of that one. Darn it. Bastoni? Well, Bastoni had the Franco-American. But I was thinking of that little grocery store that was right across the street from me. I can't come up with it. Glory? That sounds right. So anyway, what else?
Well, I would just be interested to, for you to tell us what is at the location of your home now, and how many steps it was from the store to your apartment.
The upstairs where we lived, there were 26 steps from the grocery level to where we lived upstairs. And Al and I would, when we were young, we would get a cardboard box from Dad downstairs, take it up to the top of the steps, and we'd get in the box, and then Al would shove off and we'd go sailing down the steps. We had a lot of fun.
And do I recall you telling me that it's the same building as the rescue mission houses now? Right down the street. Al Maggini. You grew up in San Francisco, and I believe we're not yet around for the 1906 earthquake, if my math is right. But I believe your family was affected by it, the earthquake and fire. And you tell us a little bit about that and about the San Francisco you knew as a kid.
My mother and dad were born in San Francisco. Both my grandfathers were born. One was born in Lugano on Lago Maggiore, and the other one was born I don't know where in Ireland. And both my dad's mother was born in San Francisco, and my mother's mother was born in Maine, someplace in Maine, I don't know now. And we were a family of 3 kids. I had two brothers. We were 13 months apart. And then they pulled the plug, I guess. I'm the oldest one. My brother Chris was a automobile sales, had a Chevrolet agency in Berkeley for years, Maggini Chevrolet. And my brother, some of you may have known my brother, he was an attorney here in town for many years. They both passed away, Chris about 6 years ago, and Buzz about 3 years ago, I guess. I went to school, say in SI. My dad died when we were in 1928. We were middle income family, and by the time 33 came, that was the end of the ball game. Mother didn't know very much. She knew a lot of things about how to get along in this world, but that wasn't one of them, how to finance, to get along in finance. And she got us 3 guys up to maturity. How the hell she ever did it, I don't know, but I was probably the worst one of the group. But she got us all up to maturity, and I was married at 23 years old. Chris was married at 23 years old. My brother Buzz didn't, he was in the war. Buzz made, as a matter of fact, 3 beachheads, and one at Enzio. He got hit up in France, and that was, that took care of him there. That's kind of the beginning of where I came from, and after the war I came up here, and we could probably get to that a little later.
Your father left the grocery business for another business. And can you tell us a little bit about your roots in beer distributing? What and how he got started?
Yeah, I think this is I think this is very interesting. At the time of repeal, 1932, well, actually it began in 1933. 32 is still dry year. Dad turned the running of the grocery store over to Mother, and he opened at 24 4th Street, which is where Chevy's restaurant is now. And he had Acme beer, which was brewed in San Francisco. Sorry about that, Mike. Anyway, interestingly, in that year, that was prior to the building of the Golden Gate Bridge. And the only way he could get the beer up here was to take the truck down to the ferry boat at Sausalito and go across the bay and go to the brewery, pick up the beer, bring it back to the ferry boat and take it to Santa Rosa. And he did that for years. And enlarged, he was renting at that time a section of 24 4th Street and wound up owning it, well, not owning it, but renting it all, and then decided, well, we better move. And about that time, Al and I got involved with my brother Al, and I got involved with Dad, and started expanding. And you want me to go further?
We'll come back.
Okay. At any rate, I was trying to conclude the Trombetta distributors aspect of it, and I'll get back to that, I guess, later.
Go ahead.
Anyway, to make a long story short, Brother Al and I went to Heald Business College after graduations, and then we proceeded to open branches in Santa Fe, Vallejo, Ukiah, and Eureka finally, and by then we were in the hard liquor, wine, and beer business, and we were doing quite well, and I got involved with Redwood Empire Association and a few other things, along with the Rose Parade. You want me to go into that?
We'll come back. I was hoping that you might tell us a little bit about your first work and the environment in the country at the time.
Well, I would be very remiss if I didn't mention, which I forgot to do. My grandfather. I had a grandfather, in San Francisco you had to be Italian or Irish. And the Irish and the Italians were all in the police department, all in the fire department, and some of them were in politics. And we won't talk about one of my mothers that was in politics because that was a very, I won't even mention the name. But my grandfather in the fire department, and the second day after the earthquake and fire, the fire chief died. of a heart attack, and my grandfather and another man ran the fire department in the earthquake and fire in San Francisco. We lived on, the house was on Hyde Street between Washington and Jackson in San Francisco. I lived there until I got married, as a matter of fact, and it was wiped out, of course, in the fire, and they rebuilt it. But there are a lot of medals that my grandfather had, out of the Young Museum. So I wanted to be sure and say that. And that's the thing you asked me?
About your early work, your first work.
Oh, my early work. When I got out of high school, I told Mom, I got to go to work, and I'm not going to go into the finances, but they were about as bad as you could probably get. So I went to work with a painter's helper on a gas station, and all of a sudden, a friend of my mother said, "Why don't you get Al to go and see if he'd like the finance business?" So I got a job as a runner in San Francisco on Montgomery Street, 65 bucks a month, and gave Mom 40. I kept 25. I still could take dates out. I don't know how the hell I did it, but I did it. And a runner in San Francisco, you did everything that was dirty. If you had it rained and it didn't make any difference. You took bonds and stocks to every place. And that was, I stayed there until I got married, and we married, became an assistant cashier in this firm, but there were family troubles, and Helen and I decided to go to Los Angeles, and got a job as a worker in a oil supply company. And this oil supply company had its headquarters in Los Angeles, but it had, in every oil field, it had little stores. So I went down there and I met the boss, and he told me you could take you downstairs. And the first manager said to me, "Do you know L and a T?" "Oh, L and a T? What's an L and a T?" Well, that's how we started out the plumbing business for Al Maggini. They sent me out to Taft, and Taft was about 120 every day in the summer. And I was a slim guy, and I had to lift 100-pound sacks and put pipe on trucks. And finally, I don't want to go through the rest of it. I went to 2 more stores. The last store was Ventura, great. And while I was at Ventura, I became the manager of that store, and then war was declared.
Speaking of the war, I was hoping you could all both think for a minute about how the attack on Pearl Harbor, how it struck you, what was going through your mind as you were contemplating coming into the war. Not many of us in this room were as mature as you guys were on December 7, 1941. What went through your mind with the attack on Pearl Harbor?
I have to ask you what you said because I'm hard of hearing.
Pearl Harbor, what were you thinking about as America entered the war?
Oh.
What were you thinking at this time in December 1941?
Yeah, I was thinking, well, in 41 I was still, I graduated in 40 from Santa Rosa High, and then I went out to Beacon Hill Business College in San Francisco, and yeah, I was expecting that our country would get involved definitely with Germany, and in a way, as young as I was looking kind of forward to it. I wanted to be in a uniform. I wanted to go to war.
Well then, go ahead and tell us about when you did join I know that you thought about becoming an aviator in the Navy, and you thought better of it. Tell us a little bit about that, and about your going where you wound up.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I decided I decided when I was going, when I graduated from Hill Business College, I came back to Santa Rosa and went to Santa Rosa Junior College just for a fresh-up course. And I told Dad, I said, I want to go to San Francisco and sign up in the Navy Air Force. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, I am. So anyway, I jumped in his CAD and off we went, and we went to San Francisco, and I went upstairs to the Navy Air Force sign up, and the doctor took his fingernail and did this on my arm, and I said, what are you doing that for? He says, I'm doing that to check to see whether or not you can stand that sea air out there on that ship. So I got to thinking about that, and then he said, on that ship, and I said to myself, I said, what if I take off the aircraft carrier, fly a mission, come back, and the boat isn't there? So I said, the hell with that. I thank him very much for his concern about my health, and I left and went down the stairs and got Dad and said, take me over to the Air Force office, and that's when I signed up in the Air Force because it sounded good to me.
Who knew they had ships in the Navy? Had you ever been on an airplane at that point in 1940 or whatever year that was? It was early in the 40s. Had you ever been on an airplane?
Oh, only as a passenger.
Okay. Tell us a little bit, I'd like to know about what caused you to enter the war effort, and tell us a little about your joining and where you wound up.
I was in Ventura washing my car when I heard war was declared. And I went and told Helen, and she said, I hope you're not going to have to go to war. And I said, well, yeah, I don't think I'm married, and they're not going to take me. I had two brothers. My brother Buzz, as I told you, was made 3 beachheads, and he was not married. So he went in right away. And he was in the tank battalion and ended his whole career in the service as a tank. He was a radio operator for a tank battalion. He was a captain in the Navy. And my other brother was Chris. Chris graduated from USF, and Chris signed up for the Navy. And in those days, they had what we called 90-day wonders. If you had a college education, they put you in the Navy and gave you an ensign, but they didn't do very much with you. They sent him down to Lake Pontchartrain, and he checked out all the landing craft. So that was kind of my brother. So then I say after about 3 months to Helen, I better think of getting in the service. I had one thing I was sure I was not going to do if I could get out of it, was slog down as a foot soldier. That was out of the question. If I got anything to do about it. So I decided I'd go in the Air Corps and went down to Santa Ana, and a friend down there took me through the physical. I passed it fine, and I signed up that day. And they told me when I did it that it would be at least 6 months before they'd have to take me. Evidently, we didn't have enough airplanes, and we didn't have enough of anything going yet. So after that, at 6 months, I was called, and I went to Santa Ana Army Air Base.
You flew the P-47, which I understand from Google was one of the, if not the largest and heaviest fighter aircraft in history to be powered by a single 4-stroke internal combustion engine. Tell us a little bit about the P-47. How was it to fly it?
Yeah, I was very disappointed. When I graduated from Luke Field in Arizona, we went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the bus took us out to the Harding Air Force Base, and I saw all these great big lumps. And I said, oh my God, a P-47, I wanted a P-51. And I couldn't do a damn thing about it. They wouldn't let me fly a P-51. I had to fly a P-47. And would you like to know what I think about the airplane?
We would.
Well, thank God for the P-47, because at that same time, I decided that Marjorie Woods was going to be my wife, and I sent for her. By then, I was a second lieutenant, and I thought that my pay was high enough that I could support her, and I rented a house in Baton Rouge, and Margie came out, and we were married. We went to, I gotta tell this story. We went to a big city there. What?
New Orleans?
New Orleans. And Carl Ravazza was playing the orchestra. I don't know how many of you remember Carl Ravazza, but anyway, we went to this dance and had food, and then when we came back to the motel, I grabbed the covers of the bed and I flung them open, and there was a whole family of bed bugs in there. So that really kind of took care of things for that evening.
That pretty much what happened? Then you married him anyway. You've been happy about that. He's been happy about that. The B-17. The B-17 dropped about 640,000 tons. Not yours. Oh yeah. Yeah, I did a lot of research. I did. On Google this morning. 640,000 tons of bombs on Germany and its allied territories. Tell us about, I think there was a time at which you thought you might become a pilot. Tell us about that, and tell us about flying a bomber as opposed to a fighter or a fighter bomber.
Excuse me. When I got to Santa Ana, they gave you a test. The Army had tests ready for everything, those of you who've been in the Army. This test had me on a score of 10 to 1, 777 for a bombardier, a pilot, and a navigator. And I just made it. I was about 27 years old by then. And I thought, I better be a navigator. But all of the young guys were there in 18, 19, 21. Come on, Al, let's go out and fly. So we went, I said I'll go and try and be a pilot. I was in a Stearman, you know, a biplane at Tulare, California. I'll never forget it. And I had never been I'd been in an airplane before, but not a Stearman. And I learned how to do all these things, and I flew pretty good. I was never a good acrobatic pilot. So I passed there, and I went up to Chico. And there was an airplane up there, it was made by Vultee, called the Vultee Vibrator. If you took a spin, after the first spin, Bob, that bugger just shook. It just scared the hell out of you. And I flew the thing and soloed it. I got a night flight, and but I never had a feel for it. And they, of course, I went up with an Army guy, and he said, look, we haven't got any navigators. You could make it. We need navigators. You're going back to Santa Ana and right to navigator school. So I went probably to the worst place in the world, Hondo, Texas. Has anybody ever been to Hondo, Texas? You don't ever want to go to Hondo, Texas. The cockroaches, I'm not kidding you, were this big in Hondo, Texas, and that was every night. You shook your clothes out every morning to get them, and out of your hat. And they would breed under your shoes, your wet shoes, your clacks, you know, when you went in the shower. They breed under there, and it was just absolutely horrible. I was turned out to be a pretty good navigator, and I was a very good celestial navigator, and that was great. In combat, I never used it once, but I used it to fly the Atlantic, and I used it for a couple of other things. But I thoroughly enjoyed being a navigator, and the moment I got my wings and my commission, the day I got it, they said, go down and get your orders, and my orders were for Tampa, McDeal Field at Tampa, and I said to somebody, what's down there? And they said, B-17, so that made me very happy, because of all the bombers I ever put together, there was nothing like a B-17. I know you people have seen over the years pictures and pictures of the wrecks that came back. And I can tell you, I came back in one that was a pretty good wreck, not as bad as some of those. But one engine out, supercharger out on the other engine, and pretty well shot up, gas tanks leaking. It's another story that I could take about a half hour with, how we got that thing back. But it was a great airplane, and I flew, as I said, 35 missions. Some of them were horrible. 2 milk runs that I remember. Milk run means nothing. You just rode the airplane and everything in between. And I flew some leads with it. I came home by myself. I didn't come home with my crew because I'd flown some leads, and I was off with them for a while. But the B-17 has gotten a lot of accolades over the years, and they deserved every one of them. It was a great airplane and an easy plane to fly. I flew it, Bob, when we go up and test engines and break-in engines a little bit. That George had let me fly it just because if something happened, I was the only one that had any flying training, and maybe I could get the thing back again. So that's kind of that.
Tell us a little bit about the difference between the flying that you did in a fighter bomber and flying a bomber, and why you preferred the plane that you had, even though it wasn't your first choice. The difference between a fighter and a bomber.
Yeah, pardon me. At that time, I was 22 years old, and I wanted excitement. And a bomber didn't sound very exciting to me. I didn't like the idea of, like Al, the navigator, in a B-17 flying for the target. Now they have to maintain that line over the target, and the guys that are on the ground are shooting up there. Al can't tell the pilot to wiggle down, they gotta stay in that line. So I never wanted to be in a bomb. So what happened was I was terribly disappointed in not having a P-51. However, the P-47 was an air-cooled engine, and the P-51 was a liquid-cooled engine. And when you hit a liquid-cooled engine with a bullet, it doesn't have to be very big. The liquid goes out of the engine, and the engine stops, and you either bail out or you crash, or whatever you want to do. With the P-47, a couple of times, at one time I had 3 cylinders shot out, and one time 5 cylinders shot out of 28, and I got home. So I love that airplane. It brought me back to Margie.
Bob brought up this flying in a line, and I don't know whether you appreciate this. At the IP, which is the initial point, the bombardier hooks into the airplane, and he does all the turning from there until it's bombs away. The pilot, all the pilot does is maintain the altitude. So when you get on that line, and I lots of times I help the bombardier find the target, but he had to kill any drift off that line, and that had little screws on the northern bomb site. And he kept wiggling these screws till he killed it right straight, and it was right on that line. Then he killed the speed line, and then they set them on the target. Over here is a board, and there are little switches on there, and it tells you whether you're going to throw the bombs out or salvo the bombs or spread them out. So the bombardier, when he kept just tweaking this thing to the very end, and at the very end, when it hit Bango, the bombs came out of the bomb bay. But there was no wiggling around, as Bob said, in a bomber. You stayed there and took your punishment, and that was it.
I appreciate you doing it. I think you have a couple, I'd like to hear, I think we all like to hear a couple of, well, I guess, war stories. And you've got a couple of stories that are, both of them are wonderful. And I'd like to hear them. And I'm going to ask you too if there's a story or two, okay. But you've got a couple of wonderful stories from your flying day.
You want the one about the June 109 that I thought I was going to... Oh, okay. Yeah, I got into a dogfight, and this German pilot in the 109 was an awfully good pilot. He was almost as good as me. And I ran out of ammunition. I couldn't get him to, couldn't hit him. And but I had enough bullets in him to drop a landing gear. And now he's coasting and trying to find a place to put the airplane down. And I'm saying to myself, I'm out of ammo, but I can come up alongside him and I can take the canopy back and I can get my 45 automatic and I can shoot him. And then I thought about that and I said, that wouldn't be nice at all. So rather than do that, I came up alongside him, and I pulled the canopy back and I gave him a salute, and then I went up and went back to my airfield. That was... I wish I could know who he was, because if he's alive, I would say that I would really give him a hug.
He would give you a hug.
At any rate, the reason that I went into the 9th Air Force is that when we were in England, we had a speaker, a general colonel speaker for the 8th Air Force and a colonel speaker for the 9th Air Force. And they were selling us on coming with them. And I got to thinking about it, and I said to my buddies, keeping in mind, folks, that I was 22 years old, so I was full of vinegar. And I looked at my buddies and I said, God, I don't see the 8th Air Force escorting a bomber as much excitement. This guy from the 9th Air Force is telling me we dive bomb, we rocket, we strafe, we ammo dumps and airfields and all that. That sounds exciting. I want to do that. So I told my buddies, I said, you coming with me or not? And they said, yeah, let's go to the 9th Air Force. And that's how I got into the 9th Air Force P-47.
I'll be back to you.
I'll just give you one particular mission I was on, because it was a very big mission for us. There were about 300 plus bombers going on at a oil gasoline plant in by Leipzig called Mersburg. We sent in 300 plus airplanes, and the results were, I don't know whether we hit the target or not, but we lost 56 bombers. Went down on that flight, and 30 fighters. When we turned to come back, we were hit pretty good, and we had our engine out, one engine out, and the supercharger. So we dropped out of the formation. We had to drop out of the formation. They couldn't stay with you. And we had a ME-109 start to come in, and a P-51 ran him off, and then stayed with us for a little bit of time. But when we got a little ways over Belgium, the pilot called and said, our tanks were hit and we haven't got very much gas. Do you think we can get home? So I took a few minutes and worked it out. I said, we end up in the North Sea, in the English Channel. And that isn't a very good place to end up. The chances of making it are slim to nothing. So, well, the next thing you do is you bail out. But if we bailed out, we set the airplane going and it runs into somebody's house, and a lot of people get killed, so that was out. But when we're talking about this thing, I look down on a field at Brussels, we were passing, and I see some Spitfires, and I see some C-47s. And I thought, well, here, with these guys ain't German. And so I thought that the pilot take a look, Lee takes a look, and he gets a hold of it. And then we tried to, they said, the field is, the Germans were only 2 days away. They just happened 2 days before. The pilot, they said that the big strip is still pockmarked, so you can't come in there, but you try and you can maybe make the small strip. So we came in with the problems with the airplane, and George couldn't make it. And I'll tell you, Bob, I know will appreciate that, he had to go up. And he had all pressure. Those engines had all the pressure, and the thing is shivering like this, like it wants to spin out. He got us straightened out, and we came in the next time and got the ship down, which was quite an experience, because I think that was the only time I was scared. In my service, apprehensive. This one I was scared when it started to shake, because I knew that was a spin out.
Wow.
That was one of the.
That was scary enough. You had a story, I believe, about a piece of jewelry.
Oh, Margie will love this.
You've heard this story?
By the way, I brought this along, Chris, and it's my son-in-law, Robbie's husband, put this together for me from notes that I had made when I was over in combat. And in here is the story, our 366 Fighter Bomber Group was the first based mainland Europe ever. 366 Fighter Group. We were on Strip A1 at Omaha Beach. And we didn't have anything but tents to sleep in. And I remember needing a shave one morning, and I didn't have a place for my mirror because I was in a tent. But I did see this tree outside, and so I went to the tree and I planted the mirror in the branch of the tree, and then I removed my wedding ring and I put it on the twig. And then I put my uniform on, got in my P-47 and flew a mission. And while I'm up there, I'm saying, I'm feeling through my glove, and I said, oh my God, I left the damn wedding ring on that twig. What if I get killed and they send me home and a girl and Margie sees that I don't have a wedding ring? I thought the wedding ring was still there on the twig.
She might have killed you. Well, unless there's anything else you'd like to say about the war, I thought I would ask you about coming home, how it was coming home, and what you launched as a civilian life when you came home.
The difference between when we came home from World War II and any other wars that they've had since then is just night and day. We came home, it was, I'll tell you a story, and I came home, not with my crew, but all of a sudden I got orders to get up to Scotland, and I'm going to come home on an airplane. Everybody else was coming home on a boat. Nobody that was flying wanted to come home on the damn boats because they just stuck you in the boat. And I was going to come home on an airplane. So I get up there, and a couple of days later, I asked them, why am I on this way? Well, it's bad weather, and we can't take the wounded back, so you guys are going. So anyway, the airplane, we get on this airplane, and I'm now a first lieutenant, and there's a captain who was a fighter pilot, a P-51 fighter pilot, by the way, and he, and the rest were colonels and generals, and that's what was on the airplane. So we stopped at the Azores, went into a horrible place in some place in Newfoundland. I don't know where it was, but the weather was just absolutely horrible up there. But and I'm going to make this story a little bit short. I could go on for a long time. But anyway, I landed and so forth and saw the Statue of Liberty. But on the way home, this captain and I were going to be in the same train. He's going to Los Angeles, and my wife was in Sacramento. So they get on. We got orders on to come home on the train. So we get in the train and we stopped at Chicago, and there's about 7 hours layover. So walk out. I said, let's go and get a good dinner, and I want to get a drink. In those days, I wasn't drinking martinis. I was drinking bourbon. So let's go, and then we get a drink. We go to the taxi. I said to the taxi, where's the best steakhouse in Chicago? Well, blah, 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 blah. It's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes away. So he dumps us off, and I said, be here in a couple hours or whatever, and pick us up again. He said, there's plenty of cabs, don't worry about it. So we get in this line, and the line goes down right from there, and goes down about halfway down this block. So we got plenty of time getting the line, and this girl's coming down with a little piece of paper, and she's marking this and that, and she said to me, what are you guys doing here? Well, I wanted something to eat. And she said, well, you don't stay down here. Up to the top of the line. And you know, the thing of it, I always said this nice thing about Chicago. Chicago, everybody smiled at you when you took you up to the top of the line. So we get in the steakhouse and sit down, and I'm disappointed. There's no steak. After I had my drink, no steak. And the girl comes and she said, what are you going to have? I said, what's good beside a steak? You haven't got steaks? Oh, we got them for you.
As it should be. How was it for you coming home?
Well, let's see. I came home because somewhere in here I got, oh, here it is. I wasn't very happy with the end of the war because one of my last missions was covering German civilians on the Elbe River who were leaving eastern Germany to come to where the Americans were. And that was on the Elbe River, and it was cold as hell, and they were jumping in the water and swimming across. And that was really the last mission I flew, was watching these German civilians trying to come to our side of the river. So my comment was, when I landed, I went to my CO and I said to him, Colonel, send me home. FDR gave it away to Joe. That's when poor old Franklin, as sick as he was, apparently agreed with Joe Stalin that Germany was to take everything up to the Elbe River, even though we Americans and the Germans were welcoming us to come into Berlin. So,
You left San Francisco not too long after the war and came to Sonoma County. Why? And tell us a little bit about your community involvement up here. You've done a lot of good up here.
Well, I don't know how much good I've done, but when I got back, I thought I'd be working in San Francisco. We got in the same business. The firm wanted me back. They were looking for young guys, blah, 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 blah. And the fellow that had this territory up here didn't live here. So they wanted to establish an office up here, and they asked me if I'd do it. And I had an uncle, Garcia that lived in Sebastopol for years and years and years, and had an apple ranch and everything else. And of course, I came up and saw them, liked them. My aunt was a very close friend of mine, and I talked to Helen, and she said, great, let's go up the country. So we came up here and established an office.
About when was that?
This was in 1940, I got out of the service in 45. This was about 47 or 48. And my uncle was one of the trustees at Garcia Hall out at the JC. And so he introduced me to Rand Newman. And Rand Newman said to me, we're establishing a class here for returning airmen or soldiers that want to learn how to fly. Would you do the ground school? So that's how I got started with the JC. And then Rand got me to go on a group at Memorial Hospital that formed a committee thing. And it fell apart because it was, I'm not going to say why, it just fell apart. And then by that time I was out of teaching. So I was really doing nothing, and I go to church at Hannah Boys Center. And Father O'Connor became a very close friend of mine. He was a San Francisco guy, lived in the Mission District, and we got along fine. And he asked me to be on that board. So I was on that board and eventually became the president of the board of that. But then I got back again to the junior college when they changed from, they changed it differently. It was used to be just Annalee and Santa Rosa. Now they were going to put in Petaluma, Sonoma, and the northern part of the county. And so Rand said, would you like to work with the junior college? And I said, fine. He said, you're going to have to, it's political. You're going to have to run for office. Well, that was a pain. He said, well, nobody's going to run against you anyway, so forget about it. So that was, I spent 33 years until 1948, I guess it was. I didn't run anymore. It got too political for me. And when it got political, that was the end of the ball game. But Memorial, I've had a great experience, and I don't know what I'd do without it today. One of the ladies I worked with is here tonight, and I've worked with the raising money, trying to raise money for them. And I will keep it doing it as long as I got my marbles and I can get around. This county has been very good to me. I came up here and I didn't have a pot or a window. And, there's not much left. There's not much left now, but I mean, there's enough. I think I got enough to get me through the next few years. You know, the string gets a little short.
Hey, listen, if you run short, just ask Bob. He'll help you out. 33 years on the board of the trustees of Santa Rosa Junior College, I believe the longest serving trustee, and I hope you've all been to Maggini Hall, and this man has made his mark on it and continues. And you came home and went to work. And tell us a little bit about what you did as a civilian.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, when I got back from the service, of course, the first and only thing I could think of is Margie. That's number one. And then second to that would be my mother and my father, and then my two little sisters, Florine and Linda. Brother Al by then was married and had kids and was very happy. So Charlie Cornelia and I, with the original Junior Chamber of Commerce in Santa Rosa, were the starters and restarters of the Rose Festival. And I can remember going to Mrs. Burbank, and because she was a very quiet person and did not really like publicity for either herself or for her husband. And I had to talk to her about wanting to put on this Rose Parade in honor of Luther Burbank. So Charlie and I did it, and the banks in downtown Santa Rosa went along with us and put beautiful flower plants inside their banks so that the customers, when they came in, they were able to see all the flowers, and that included my good friend Bill Ranking and Exchange Bank, Bank of America, and the American Trust. And then after that, I got involved in the Redwood Empire Association and became the president of that because we wanted to improve the the Redwood Empire area north of San Francisco, and we wanted people to know what they could see in this Redwood Empire of ours.
I know I and a whole lot of us here are grateful to you for reinvigorating and bringing back the Rose Parade. And there's still a lot of effort going on to keep that a tradition forever. Thank you for that. I hope we're going to have some time for Q&A. I'll need somebody to signal me, but I do have one last question. And Tom Brokaw famously referred to you guys as members of the greatest generation. And I have reason to believe that you take some exception to that, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I certainly do, Chris. By the way, before I give you an answer, I've got to show everybody why I'm not like Al there. But, yeah, what was that again?
The greatest generation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I disagree with that statement, and I'm hoping that most of you will agree with me. I think it was Al's and mine and most of you out there, fathers and mothers generation, that really was so far the greatest generation in our country. I hope you agree with that. I disagree with Tom Brokaw that it was Al's and my generation and ours. I think it was our folks' generation that was the greatest.
Do you have any thoughts, I know you do, about the greatest generation?
Well, it's the only reason why our generation did it is because everything fell in our lap. You have to remember, some of you that are old enough to remember that the depression that we went through was saved by World War II. And anybody that says any different, I'll disagree with them all day long. And then when we came back, it was, we walked into a pretty nice thing too, because we bombed everybody in the world, from Japan to Italy to Germany, and then they didn't have anything or a pot or a window. And, they had to, and we had to supply them. And so it made, we had a lot of things thrown in our lap too, Bob. I'll go along with you there. But he made a statement.
Can we take a question or two? Okay, and then I think if you'll just call it out, I'll be able to hear you, and maybe we'll try to repeat it. Yes, in the back.
I was just wondering if either of you have read the book A Higher Call, about the Messerschmitt pilot who refused to shoot down the B-17.
Great story.
I read it too, and I was thinking about Bob. I was thinking about that story as Bob was recounting his own encounter. Yes, sir. Did you have a question? Yes.
Bill Orem here, 82nd Airborne. Virginia and I had a good friend in Concord, California. Cy Cohen graduated from San Francisco State in 1939, flew a P-38 in Europe, shot down twice over there, and got back to England. He flew a plane called Peg of My Heart. That was his wife. Do you remember seeing that plane over there?
Peg of My Heart.
Peg of My Heart. At that time, that was a record.
And I'm sorry, that was a P-38?
P-38.
P-38. We never. When I was there, the P-38 was not an airplane that was very much used. They weren't. Well, frankly, they didn't stand up to a ME-109 or a Focke-Wulf. they were great in the Pacific, and it was a great airplane. But I didn't see any P-38s at all.
Any other question?
I have a question.
Yes,
Can you tell us about the 1969 earthquake
the 1969 earthquake.
here in Santa Rosa?
What do you remember about the 1969 earthquake?
Who was I? I guess it's, yeah. Was that funny? I can't, yeah, I don't recall that. I really don't. Did you remember that, honey?
Your son says you were watching TV and you didn't care that much about
No, I can't. I'm not very good at earthquakes. The only one I ever felt was the one when the Giants were playing the World Series, and 89. Yeah, that's the only one. I sleep through earthquakes. I don't know. It's I just don't feel earthquakes very much.
it. 1969 was too long ago for these guys. Yes.
Al, it's Barbara Sloat, Charlie and Pudge Sloat's daughter. And I'm just kind of curious, I think my dad flew a B-17. Do you know, do you remember? You know, my dad died 30-something years ago.
B-17.
I think my dad, Charlie Sloat, did he
Charlie
fly?
Sloat?
Was it a B-17 or a B-29?
Charles, that was a good friend of mine.
Yeah, I know. I'm his daughter. Hi. And then Ken Pedersen is sitting right next to me because he's my husband. But do you remember what my dad flew?
No, I haven't any idea. There were, just to give you a rough idea of the 8th Air Force, there was the 1st Air Division had 12 units in it. Each one of those had 48 airplanes in it. Then they had the second one was B-24s, and then the third unit, but the third division, the third Air Force division was B-17s again. There were so many airplanes over there that, and you know the funny thing about it is, or funny thing about it, the beautiful thing about this country, when we started the war, we didn't have anything. By the time the Japanese got through with us, we had nothing. In 2 years, I flew an all-out mission with 1,400 plus airplanes in it, bombing Germany.
You don't remember what Charlie Sloat flew, but airplane? Remember him talking about it? No.
He never talked about it, that's why.
You remember him not talking about it?
Good man.
Did you have a question?
Yes. I'm interested to know from two people who have lived here so long and had such an incredible impact on this community, what are some of the things that you've seen happen in Santa Rosa that you think really helped develop the community or strengthen it in some way?
That's hard. I mean, when I got up here, there were 40,000 people in Santa Rosa. It's one thing to start. It's a great place to live. Let's put it that way. But there were some very, very strong people in this town that did so much to develop this town. I'm not going to go through names because it isn't fair. I remember a few of them, but I don't remember enough of them to make it fair. So I'm going to leave names out of it. But there were a number of people here that did an awful lot for this town.
The question was, who or what helped develop this town? What did you see in the way of people making Santa Rosa what it is?
Well, I think for one, the Grace Brothers, I think you have to name them because they had an awful lot to do with the growing up of this city. If I'm not mistaken, I think when I was born in 1922, I think there was something like 12,500 people in Santa Rosa, I believe.
We weren't on the map either.
He said you were not on the map.
No, that's right, that's right. And let's see, other than the Graces, I'm thinking, oh, God, our police chief.
That's Flora.
Dutch Floor, what a guy. He was something else. Dutch, I can remember him coming down to Skid Row, that was Little Italy. And he'd load the wagon with indigents and take them out of town and drop them off. Just so that the merchants wouldn't have to face going to work and putting the key in the lock and have an indigent laying there. He was a great cop. And let's see, who else in town? Oh God, there were just so many good people that really built this town. I can't come up with them.
I think it's good what he said.
Yes.
I'm Bill Morris. We talked about the Hannah Boys Center. I was born and raised there. I was one of the indicated that you can go to the Navy. I joined the Navy. I flew torpedo planes while we were in Europe. And so, yeah, it was a little scary when you came back and the ship wasn't there.
You heard that. He agreed with you. It's a drag when the ship leaves from where you took off. He agreed with you. Yes.
My house was just 6 blocks from Hannah Boys Center, and Helen and I lived there for 45 years until she got ill. Yeah.
Mechanics.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Did either of you ever encounter the Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighters when in Europe?
Did you encounter the jet fighters of Germany?
When I was on about maybe the 4th to the last mission I flew, and all of a sudden, there's something goes woof.
Yeah.
And what the hell was that? It wasn't a rocket. So we come back to, and you have to go through all the debriefing, and they got the intelligence officers out there. So they all they ask, what's new? What did you see? Is there anything different? Blah blah blah. And I said, I saw a foof something go by with a foof. And he said, well, that must have been a rocket or some kind of a rocket. He knew damn well that the Germans had jets. And I'm going to tell you something. The guys that were flying didn't like the idea. But we found out that they couldn't stay up there very long. They didn't, it wasn't developed enough to be able to have enough fuel to stay up there very long. So we didn't worry too much about it when we heard that. But you know, we were going at, what did you go, 400 miles an hour, about the best you could do, huh? Around 400. And this thing just went, just flew like fire.
Did you ever see one of the jet fighters up there?
Yeah, I had 2 Me-262s come through my 12-ship formation at about 20,000 feet, and I didn't even know what the hell they were. I mean, they were so fast. They came right up through the center of our 12-ship formation, and I looked at them. The twin jet is the 262, and we couldn't catch them. There was no way we could fire a bullet.
Anyone else? Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, Al, speaking of jets, I understand that you own a Porsche. And I'd be interested to know what year and what model Porsche you drive.
I get a lot of heat from this thing. Some people, what are you doing? Is it second childhood or something like that? But I've had Porsches for a long time. I have a 2012 GTS. The only thing wrong with the damn thing is that you can't go to a gas station and get your tire changed. It's got a thing on it that's like on a racing car, and then you have to have a special thing. Well, I got the special thing, but you have to have a wrench that can produce torque up to 400 pounds. And nobody in Santa Rosa or in Sonoma County has any torque wrench like that. So, when you get a flat tire, and I've had two of them, unfortunately, you call and they send a truck up from Marin County, they take the car down. It doesn't cost me anything, but it's a pain. But I love the car. Everybody wants it.
All right. Oh, how about you and then you?
Well, I'm a little biased. Bob's my grandfather, and I had a tooth crack on me, a filling crack. Can you tell us what it's like going and flying at altitude with dental work?
She asked how it feels to be flying way up there when you have your teeth are hurting from dental work.
Oh, you. I heard about that, huh?
I remember that.
We were in Baton Rouge, and this is after Margie and I were married, and just before I went overseas, and I wanted to see just how far up could I go in that P-47. And I got up over 30,000 feet, and things started slowing down quite a bit. I couldn't gain altitude fast enough, and I said, oh, hell with it. So I just rolled it over and came down real rapidly in a dive bomb. And all of a sudden, I felt this pain in my jaw, and I had all these crumbles in my mouth. And when I landed, I found out that I blew all my fillings out of my teeth. And I was in pain, so I got out of the cockpit and I went into the lab and saw the doctor, and I told him about it, and he said, oh, hell, he says, that's great. We're going to write this up in the annals. In other words, to hell with how you feel, we're going to write this up in the annals.
Another story about that, and this is just a story. It's on some flights they decided that we should fly above 30,000 feet. Well, 30,000 feet, and that thing is wiggling all over the sky anyway, you know. It was a stupid idea, but any time it got above 30,000, we did about 3 missions or 4 missions that way, I got the bends. And other guys got the bends. I wasn't the only one that got the bends. I thought maybe because I was older, I got the bends. And as soon as it flipped down through this one around 30,000, went away, never came back again, never felt anything about it. But as soon as it got up again, got the bends. Interesting. It's just interesting. I had to throw that in.
I think we have one more. Yes.
About Mrs. T.
Mrs.
On
T.
the nose of your plane. I wanted to know, did you have to get permission to paint, her up on there, or did they just
She
let you?
wants to know if you had to get permission to put Marge on the plane.
You get Margie on the plane?
Yeah, did you need permission?
No, what that boils down to is, you have more pilots than you have airplanes. So, in my case, I couldn't be satisfied to just fly missions. I had to be active. And so I got involved in the the mechanics of flying the P-47 with my flight leaders, and that gave me the privilege of having my own airplane. So when that airplane arrived, it was my turn. And so I took it and I painted Margie on the cow. Oh, that's right, I didn't tell him about Colonel Triffy, did I?
You better, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so anyway, toward the end of the war, Colonel Triffy came into our outfit from the States and said, I want to fly a mission with you guys. And so my CO put him on my wing. And we went into Germany and did some things, and he got lost. And he came on the radio and he said, I don't know where I am, I'm lost. I said, well, what altitude are you? And he told me 9,000 feet, and I said, well, what do you see below you? And he described what he saw on the ground, and I said, just circle and I'll pick you up. So I picked him up and brought him back, and he was so thankful that he wanted me to come with him back to the States and be his adjutant helper and all that kind of thing. And then as the last thing he said, what are you going to do with that cow? And I said, what am I going to do with it? I said, I can't do anything with the cow. It's Mrs. T. He says, can I have it? I said, I don't know whether Uncle Sam will let you have it, but they do, take it. So anyway, I came home without Mrs. T. cow. Colonel Triffy's got it.
That's a story I'd like to write someday. Where's Mrs. T? I think we would all like to express our appreciation to the 6th Street Theater, to the Historical Society of Santa Rosa, Bob Maggini, Trombetta and Al Maggini.
Fisher!